We're joined by Jay Morrison, Bengals beat reporter for Pro Football Network. Jay, I know we were both at this rainy joint practice on Thursday. I just want to know, have you ever covered a practice that was like that before?
No. When the rain comes down like that, the Bengals usually go inside, and or if there's storms, they'll just outright cancel it. There's been a little bit where there's been some raining. I remember there's a practice last year. It was coming down a little heavier than you would like. And the thing is, the Bengals facility is kind of the same as the Bears, where there's nowhere really to go. So I went into one of the food tents for the fans and kind of hid out in there for a couple minutes while it rained. But that was almost the entire practice. I wasn't expecting that. I kept looking at the radar like, oh, it looks like it's going to break up here in a little bit. And then another wave would come through. And so it was, thank God I had an umbrella. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
No, it's just interesting just because, if they had gone inside, how much they would have had to cut the field in half and really cut down on the reps or make the practice longer.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll just start, in terms of, what we're going to find out here on Saturday in terms of how they're going to play. But I want to start with where the practice was for you from your perspective. We as Bears fans and media, we're so close to it. We see it every day, but it's interesting to get, a fresh look at a team that you saw for the first time. So, what were your biggest takeaways from watching the Bengals take on the Bears and knowing where the Bengals have kind of come here these last few years, and then looking at that in comparison to what the Bears are capable of?
Yeah. So most of my focus was on the Bengals offense, and I would look to the other field and watch the defense if it was kind of between plays. So I didn't get a good look at Caleb and the offense. I knew we'll get to see some of him on Saturday. So I was really focused on that. And I was impressed with the Bears defense, how active they were. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't ask Joe in the post game if I can't imagine he's ever had 3 interceptions in a practice before. And the Bears could have had a couple more. They had their hands on a couple other ones that they could have pulled in, and the rain had something to do with that. The Bengals I had them with 8 drops. T. Higgins alone had 4, and one of the interceptions came off of a drop that went off of the Trenton Irwin's hands. But yeah, I was impressed with that Bears defense, and what I saw from the offense. They beat. There's a cornerback battle going on with the Bengals with Dax Hill and DJ Turner, and Dax got beat on a couple slants. DJ Moore got him once. I think Rome got him once too. So I did see those plays, and I don't know. I've been watching Hard Knocks too. I love the show, so again, kind of getting familiar with the Bears through that as well. I think every year there's that one team that kind of jumps up and has a surprise season. I don't know how much of a surprise it would be, because I think it is a pretty decent roster for a team that was picking where the Bears were picking, but I think they're in for a good year. I know it's a tough division, but I think the Bears are going to be a very, very fun team to watch this year.
Jay, obviously saying that you were focusing more on that Bengals offense, and they were missing, Jamar Chase out there. How much of a difference does he make for that Bengals offense when he is out there with, T. Higgins and the rest of the playmakers that the Bengals do have?
Yeah, it's just a ripple effect. I mean, if you got Jamar and T out there, you can count on them to win most of the times, and that gives Joe all kinds of choices. And you take him out of the mix, and now you're talking about T. Higgins as your wide receiver 1, and then it's Andre Yoshivas, who was a 6th-round pick last year, and he's really coming along and playing well. And then Jermaine Burton, the rookie 3rd-round pick, and it's just a lot of guys that don't win as frequently. So it just kind of trickles through that offense, and Joe has to process a little bit more, go through his progressions more, and he's a guy that likes to just see the field, know where he's going before he gets the snap, read it and go quick. And so that was a lot of the issues yesterday. And it's been the issue all along. Jamar has not practiced yet this entire camp, but you hold the ball a little bit longer, and it gets a little dicier. And they always say don't throw the ball over the middle late, and Burrow doesn't adhere to that. If he sees a guy get crack free, he will do that, and he puts the ball in danger sometimes that way. I don't know in a game that he would do that, but I think you see that in training camp with a lot of quarterbacks. They use training camp and practices to really kind of test their limits, and I think that was part of what we saw yesterday. I don't think any of the interceptions had anything to do with that. The one I can't remember who caught which one for the Bears, but there was one where the tight end fell down, but it wasn't as though the Bears defender was behind him, and he jumped the route. He would have intercepted that even if the tight end hadn't fallen down. So it does make a difference not having Jamar out there, but I still don't think it made a huge difference. They've been doing, that was the 15th practice in a row without Jamar.
Yeah, and the Bears defense certainly has been giving the Bears offense a lot of hell here the last few weeks at Hallis Hall. When you talk about Jamar Chase, it's interesting because I do think there's a lot of similarities between the Bears and the Bengals, at least where the Bengals were when they first got Joe Burrow. And you talk about that decision to draft Jamar Chase. I know that there was like this decision between offensive lineman or wide receiver, and you see how the Bengals almost won a Super Bowl with that decision. But Joe Burrow has also had some injury issues, and he took a lot of sacks that first year. And the Bears kind of ran into that same decision this year with Rome Odunze. They very easily could have drafted an offensive lineman, and instead of taking a wide receiver, and from your standpoint and watching the development of Joe Burrow and all the ebbs and flows and the injuries and the Super Bowls, your standpoint on that decision that Cincinnati made and kind of lining that up with a similar decision that the Bears made in that regard.
Yeah, I think it was the right decision. And Penei Sewell was the tackle they were going to take, and he's been fantastic. But they needed a guy to take the top off the defense. Yes, it helped too that Joe and Jamar played together and had this pre-existing chemistry from LSU. But I think they made the right decision. And you go back to all those sacks that Burrow took early in his career. Yeah, the offensive line was terrible, and it's amazing they got to a Super Bowl with that offensive line. But a lot of that was on Joe too, holding the ball, trying to extend plays, and he doesn't have the athleticism. He was very good in the pocket, great pocket movement. And if he gets out and runs, he can make things happen. And then the ACL happens, and that kind of went away in year 2 a little more. But I think it's a great decision by the Bears because you do have Caleb Williams who can make these things happen, these secondary plays. Cam Taylor-Britt, the Bengals starting cornerback, compared him to Patrick Mahomes yesterday when we talked to him after practice, which is pretty lofty. Not overall Patrick Mahomes, just his ability to extend and have one play turn into a totally secondary play because you can't expect DBs to plaster these receivers that long. They're going to come free at some point. So I think that the Bears made the right call there. I can't remember what it wasn't a great offensive tackle. There was a lot of them. There was a lot of offensive tackles in the first round, but there wasn't that like surefire guy. So if Caleb Williams can kind of do that and avoid pressure on his own and have these receivers that you can count on to win and get the ball out fast, get that thing going, get everything clicking, and then you can start building the line starting next year.
Jay, obviously this was a preseason joint practice, still a lot of time before the regular season, but does this practice say more about what the Bears were able to do in the rating conditions or more about what the Bengals maybe couldn't do? Like I see a lot of Bears fans are kind of, whoa, look what they did against a team that's going to be in the playoffs this season. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think those kind of conditions always favor the defense. It's just people like to say it favors the offense because the receiver knows where he's going and the DB has to react. And so that the footing might be a little bit more problematic for the defense. But, we saw this last year that the Bengals opened the season in Cleveland and there was not rain in the forecast and it rained the entire game. It was the craziest thing. And they lost 24-3. They looked awful, but it was Burrow coming off the calf injury. He was 60% at best. And so there's a lot of excuse making then. And, Zach Taylor talked about it yesterday, the head coach, about, we needed this kind of work. We need to know what plays we can and can't call in this kind of weather. It's football. You're going to play in the conditions and you got to be ready for it. So I don't know that what yesterday said more about the Bengals or the Bears. I haven't seen enough from the Bears to see what they look like in nice weather. That did not at all look like the Bengals offense, what you saw out there yesterday. I mean, just T. Higgins alone with 4 drops and Mike Gesicki's been sure-handed. He had a drop and I think both teams probably would have, after the fact, knowing what they know, would have rather taken that thing inside and maybe go 3 or 4 hours to get the work in. It wasn't ideal situation to have a joint practice like that, but it is football. It's played in the elements, and the Bengals can't really be making excuses that they're going to have to play in that. at times, especially in the AFC North when you're playing games in Pittsburgh and Baltimore and Cleveland.
Yep. We know all about it here in the Midwest. In Chicago,
NFC North is the same thing. You do have one dome in the division. That's nice.
Two. Maybe one day the Bears might have one too, much to the chagrin of many here in Chicago, including Mark Carman. And yeah, so it's always tricky to figure out who won a day at practice because at the end of the day, it is just practice, especially in the elements. Just final question for me is just in terms of, fast forwarding now to the preseason game tomorrow. Your expectations. I know Zach Taylor said that the starters won't play earlier in the week, so I'm assuming that will still hold serve. But your expectations going into the game and how the kind of looks they're going to give the Bears to try to test things out, even if their starters aren't playing, trying to, install their offense and defense regardless of the personnel that's on the field.
Yeah. So talked to Logan Wilson earlier in the week because not only are the starters not going to play, backup quarterback Jake Browning, who played really well last year when Burrow got hurt, he has a rib injury. He's not going to play. So we're talking about third string quarterback Logan Wilson, a 7th round pick from 2018. He's going to probably play most of the game. And I talked to him earlier in the week about his philosophy. He went in the fourth quarter last week when the Bengals offense was doing nothing under Browning, and he completed 7 of his first 8 passes, had a 37-yard touchdown pass to the rookie Jermaine Burton, and just asked about his philosophy going into the fourth quarter of a preseason game. And he's like, let it rip. You just don't be afraid to take every shot you can and do it within the scope of the offense, but you can't be afraid. Just trust what you're seeing and go for it. And it's like, well, what about the first quarter of a preseason game? And he says the same thing. I just looked it up a little bit ago. Since 2018, he has the 3rd most preseason snaps of any quarterback in the league. So this is kind of his territory, and he's been around. He was initially a Bengals draft pick, then he went to the Titans, the Falcons. Now he's back with the Bengals. So he's seen a lot of action in the preseason, and I think they're going to see that because yes, the starters aren't playing, but I think Jermaine Burton, the rookie wide receiver out of Alabama, will. And they had this really good connection last week. And Jermaine Burton only played 5 snaps through the first 3 quarters. Then he came in the fourth quarter with Woodside and had a 37-yarder, a 38-yarder. They really had a connection. So I think you're going to see the Bengals. It's not going to be a conservative offense. They do want to see what they've got in this run game, but without the starters on O-line, the starting running backs, you really can't test that. I think you're going to see them go out there and throw the ball around and try to hit some more of those big plays like they did against the Buccaneers.
Well, Jay, again, appreciate all the great information. I know our listeners are going to love this. You can check out his work on Pro Football Network. And I know you're heading out to Wrigley, so I hope you have a great time. The weather, again, is a lot better today than it was yesterday, but appreciate you jumping on.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, sir.
We all silly like the mayor.